podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
Thanks for choosing this free Anfield Index podcast. If you'd prefer to listen to this or any of our other shows without adverts, then now's the time to check out Anfield Index Pro. With AI Pro, you can supercharge your entire listening experience. You'll not only get all of our podcasts without the ads, but you'll have them far faster with our Quick Publish feature available exclusively for subscribers. AI Pro also puts you in the heart of our sound studio, with an option to listen to many of our shows live and interact with the podcasters in real time as the shows are recording. Upgrading couldn't be easier. AI Pro is available on all popular podcast platforms. Just head on over to AnfieldIndexPro.com and get started today.
Hello and welcome to the Daily Red, your lunchtime catch-up on all things Liverpool FC on Monday the 29th of July, where not really much is happening. However, over the weekend there was news that Liverpool turned down a bid for wataru Endo from Marseille. The bid was believed to be in the region of about £12 million. And the reporting on it is that while Liverpool aren't actively looking to sell him, if an offer came in that was acceptable, they would be open to the idea of moving him on. Now, that would suggest a couple of things. Number one, that they are closing in potentially on a defensive midfielder to join the squad, which is obviously one of the two biggest needs that we have. And number two, that they maybe feel like with Tyler Morton and Stefan Bajcetic, despite neither of them being defensive midfielders, that they could cobble together depth behind a new starter. Now, Morton has obviously played a lot more football than Bajcetic. He's a couple of years older. He had the loan at Blackburn. He had the loan at Hull. At neither stop was he the primary defensive midfielder, but he is decent in that role. He played there when he came on against Betis and he looked comfortable. At Hull last season, he played with Jean-Michel Seri. Now, Seri is more naturally one that sits at the base of the midfield now that his mobility is gone. Years ago, he was more the one that kind of buzzed around and did different bits and linked play and was a passing hub for the team. In Liam Rosenior's team last season, those two played as a double pivot, and it was more Seri that would sit in and Morton could then go and hunt the ball and win it high up and link midfield to the attack a bit more. Prior to that, obviously, at Blackburn under John Dole Tollison, they did often play with a back three and then a double pivot in front of that, which Morton was part of. And Lewis Travis was the kind of nominal defensive midfielder of the duo. Lewis Travis, a former Liverpool Academy player. And that was a pairing that worked quite well until Morton's form fell off, and then there was a lot of calls from the fans to replace him with Adam Morton. But our agreement with Blackburn was that Morton had to play. He had to play a certain amount of games, so they had to pay us more money. My guess is that Blackburn also didn't want to risk not having a pipeline of Liverpool talent in future, because obviously they had Harvey Elliott, who was outstanding for them. Like, Harvey was genuinely outstanding when he was at Blackburn in the Championship, and his season there, the numbers he was putting up were quite similar to what the great Jack Wilshere had done in the Championship, that much lauded Championship season of Wilshere's. Harvey pretty much matched that, which is really, really impressive when you consider his age at the time and the fact that he was kind of late to arrive at Blackburn in that 2020-2021 season. So Blackburn probably view Liverpool as a good place for them to get young players who can come in and add something. And they probably will hope that in the future they'll be considered as a club where we'll send players for their development. And it worked. It worked really well with both Harvey and with Tyler. Tyler then stepped on, obviously, like I said, to Hull last season, where he played a lot. He's played 87 senior games over the last 2 seasons. Now, my concern with Tyler Morton is, what happens if that drops to like 15 appearances? Does that have a big impact on his development? I have significant doubts over whether he's a Liverpool player long term. And my view is always that you should sell players when their value is at its highest. And I think for us right now, his value is going to be quite high. There's rumoured interest from multiple clubs in the Bundesliga, from a couple of clubs in Serie A, Atalanta most notably, and from other clubs in England, Premier League clubs. I'd imagine an Ipswich, for example, would have a strong interest in him. He would suit how Kieran McKenna sets his team up. So are we better to keep him, or could we sell him, put in the sell-on clause and buyback clause that protect our interest in his long-term future, and then use that money to go and get a replacement for? It's hard to know what the right option is. If you're bringing in one defensive midfielder, you don't really want to sign 2, because one of them's going to be the backup and they're going to be just into the club, and that might cause some tension. Whereas Morton might be a bit more accepting of a backup role, at least for a year or so. And if we were to roll into the season with a new defensive midfielder and Alexis McAllister, and then say Morton and Jones as the primary backups, with Besetic then as the 5th midfielder for that double pivot, that's not bad. It's not great. There's some question marks with it. Curtis's injury history, Basetic's injury history, whether Morton is good enough on a regular basis. Will that defensive midfielder adapt immediately, or will there be a settling in phase? So there are questions, but it doesn't seem bad. Like, the thing with Endo is he looked really poor against Betis, but we've seen this with Endo before, where he comes into the team after a bit of a period of inactivity, and he looks like a fella that won a lottery to get some game time. And then the next time he plays, he feels a lot more comfortable and he plays a lot better. Now, there's definitely concerns about whether he's good enough and quick enough on the ball. A big part of what this manager wants is both midfield players being able to receive the ball either on the half turn or with their back to play, and being able to move themselves out of trouble. He wants those players to be very brave on the ball and be very comfortable taking the ball in any and all circumstances. And Alexis will excel at that. I think Curtis, once he finds his groove, will excel at. I think Morton would be comfortable there, and Stefan would be comfortable there. You'd hope that whatever defensive midfielder comes in, ideally Alan Varela, he would be hand in glove fit. But if it's somebody else, you'd hope that that's also a strength of their game, whereas it's not a strength of Endo's game. That's not something he's comfortable with. But again, last season we did see him, as he found a bit of form and found a groove for himself, we did see him get a bit more comfortable, a little bit braver on the ball, and be able to play little passes around the corner to get himself out of tight situations. So even though he didn't look good in the first game, I wouldn't write him off, because again, this is a pattern with him. I would be open to selling, because frankly, there's not a long list of players in our squad that you wouldn't say you have to keep no matter what. Alisson, Trent, Virgil, Alexis, Dominic, and Mo is 6. And after that, there would have to be a price point, I think, for everybody else. Either because of injury concerns, because of whether or not they're good enough to be long-term starters in the case of some of the young players. Like if someone came in and offered us 40 million for Jarrell Kwanzaa, I do think you'd have to consider it. I wouldn't say you sell him, but I think you have to consider it. The same with Bradley. If someone was to come in and offer 30 million for Connor Bradley, I think you'd have to consider it. I think you'd have to strongly consider it with both of them at that price point. Then players like Diaz, like Darwin, are they consistent enough? No. Are they good enough? Yes, but see, column A, not consistent enough. You know, Gakpo falls into that category. Jota with his injuries. Curtis with his injuries. Stefan with the injuries. Like, we know he's an immensely talented young player, but are those injuries going to linger now for the next couple of years, or is that behind him? If someone was to come in and offer a big sum, if you were, let's just say, you were in talks with Crystal Palace over Adam Wharton, and the asking price was, let's say, 90 million, but they said, look, give us 60 in Besetic, I think you'd have to consider it. You'd have to consider it. Again, I'm not advocating for selling any of these players. I'm just saying there's only 6 that I would say you mark as untouchable. And like Szoboszlai, I know people will have maybe some questions over, but we invested a huge amount last summer. He had one season of being poorly used, got injured during that season, obviously struggled for form in the back half, but no question, he's an enormous talent. And I think you would back him to fit really well into this Arne Slot team. Can play the 10, can play left wing, can play in a midfield 3, can do a lot of different things for you. I think he's one you'd definitely be wanting to keep. Everybody else, I think you'd look at and say, well, I could see a world in which we sell that. And Endo obviously is part of that group, and he's part of that group where if an offer comes in of 14, 15 million, you would have to look at it and say, right, it's about what we paid last summer. He plugged the gap for us, and I think outperformed most people's expectations, considering he was coming in from a Stuttgart team who had barely survived relegation. He has limitations, but nobody would ever doubt his heart. Nobody would doubt his willingness, his intelligence, the leadership that he can bring. And, you know, when you start to look at the results with him in the team last season, I mean, when he started, we were very good. We were very, very good. I think the only game we lost in the league where he started was Palace. I'm almost certain that's right. I'm almost certain that's right. We lost to Spurs. He came off the bench in that game. And obviously we were robbed in that game. We lost to Arsenal. He didn't play because he was away. We lost to Palace. Let me just check that. I'm 90% certain he started that game. And then we lost to Everton, but he didn't start that. Yeah, he started the Palace game. It's the only league game that he started that we lost last year.
I don't need a VPN. I've got nothing to hide. This is what I used to tell myself before I hooked up with LibertyShield.com. Not only is my home internet now fully encrypted, but I can now access all the websites I want, whenever I want, and do so from absolutely anywhere. As a Liverpool fan, I love to know I can now watch every match, regardless of whether it's on UK TV or not. My Liberty Shield VPN makes sure nothing is blocked and guarantees me super fast streaming speed throughout that match. You can get connected right now with their software package, which includes a 48-hour no-obligation free trial and instant access to their apps for Apple, Android, Fire TV, PC, Mac and Android TV. Or go a step further like I have and get one of their pre-configured VPN routers. These small but powerful devices allow you to easily connect every device in your home to VPN, making it the perfect solution for smart TVs, Mac boxes and games consoles. Visit libertyshield.com today and use coupon code AIVPN25 to get 25% off at checkout.
We won all the League Cup games. Well, we won all the League Cup games, bar one anyway, but, you know. He did start the United FA Cup game, but, I mean, we lost in extra time in that one, so we didn't lose in the 90. And then, did he start against Toulouse and Union? He definitely started against Atalanta in the game we got hammered in, but again, we got hammered. He did start away to Toulouse. That's the 3-2 defeat. He only played 45 minutes in that one. And ultimately, we were robbed by some dreadful officiating in that one. And then he started the Union St. Gilloise game, but it was pretty much irrelevant. Like, our record with him in important games was very good. So you couldn't look at it and say, well, he let us down at any point. Like, he gave everything he had in every single game. There were definitely games where he wasn't quite good enough. But there were a lot of games where he was. And if you look back at, like, go and look back at the Arsenal game at Anfield, and he was outstanding in that game. From about 15 minutes on, because we started really poorly in that game. But once we got up to speed, we were 1-0 down, but we absolutely dominated Arsenal for the remainder of that game. And then go and look at the City game in the league, the Anfield game, and he was excellent in that as well. Like, they're the two highest level opponents we played last year, and he excelled in both of those games. So I'm happy to keep him. And I do think, while he will have limitations, and he's not a hand-in-glove fit for what Arne wants to do, I do think he's clever enough to make it work. And I also think if you're winning a tight game 1-0 or 2-1 with 15 minutes to go, I'd rather have Endo coming off the bench than either Morton or Bajcetic to shut that game down. I would rather put my faith in that kind of experience and nous than in a more talented young player. And like Morton and Endo or Morton and Bajcetic are more talented than Endo. Morton is a better player right now than Stefan, purely because he's got a lot more minutes and he's a couple of years older. But I still wouldn't pick him over Endo right now in that type of situation. So either way, there's pros and cons. You know, there's pros to selling him, there's pros to keeping him. There's cons to selling him, there's cons to keeping him. I don't think it's an easy decision. I know a lot of people are making out that it is, but I don't think it's an easy decision for the management, for the sporting director to make. If he wants to go somewhere and play more, then it becomes an easier decision. Like, if he says to them, look, I'd rather go start elsewhere rather than just be a situational squad player who plays in the domestic cups and gets, 15 minutes here, 20 minutes there. I'd rather go somewhere I can start every week. Then it becomes a very easy decision. Then it becomes okay, we can't offer you that. If we get close to our money back on you, we're happy to thank you for everything you've done. You did us a great solid last year. Best of luck in whatever it is you do next. Because, you'd have to treat the guy with that kind of respect. On This Is Anfield, there is a Selling with Turo Endo headline piece. Could be a cold, logical decision for Liverpool's new era. Killed them with passes, 6 things spotted in LFC training as Arne Slot gets hands-on. So it's become evident very quickly that he is heavily involved in the training sessions and really, really wants to work on the fine details of build-up play, progression, chance creation. And all of the players seem to be absolutely loving what they're experiencing right now. Harvey Elliott, the latest, to come out and say that the players are really enjoying it, really excited to try and apply what they're learning and training into actual games. It's also been noted that the club are working closely with Fabio Carvalho. He is largely playing on the wing. He has already said he prefers to play as the 10, but I don't think he's good enough, personally. He'd be one that would be high on the list of sales. It's not that I don't think he's good enough to play in a wide position for us. And he's not going to start in a number 10 position for us. And I could see him getting quite vocal about not being happy about that. So he'd be one I think you'd look to move on. Liverpool finally have a number 9 with the group. So having not had a striker for the first 2 games, Diogo Jota is now in training with the group. And it's unlikely he'll start the game against Arsenal in midweek. But I would say the United game after that will look quite good. And Arne has already started to tweak things. Obviously, a lot of people are trying to take an awful lot from the game against Betis. That is a manager working with what he has and showing great tactical versatility to operate without certain key components. I wouldn't take a ton from a lot of what was done in that game, such as the 2 number 10 situation with Harvey and Dominic playing kind of as false 9/number 10s. Once a 9 comes in, I think Harvey comes out of that mix and maybe starts to get more in the mix in wide areas. A lot of crosses, a lot of low crosses, a lot of cutbacks. This is what I really like. We're seeing players whip low crosses across the 6-yard box, pulling the ball back to the edge of the area. I think this is the type of service that Darwin and Jota can thrive on as number 9s, that Dominic and Alexis from midfield in particular can thrive on just stepping onto. I think that could be really beneficial to us. Some interesting training methods. Does look quite good. The training does look very interesting. And then Arne saying, kill them with passes. So if you had watched Brighton over the last couple of years, you'll have seen De Zerbi preaching about inviting the press, making the opponent make the first decision, keeping the ball, being very patient, not looking to immediately go long, to immediately try and just attack from the off. This is more about control. It's about picking your moments. And this is what Arne was doing at Feyenoord. I said it when he was linked. His style of football is far closer to De Zerbi than it is to Klopp. And all the players have said it's a massive change from what we have been doing. So all the galaxy brain people that said, oh, it's the closest style of football to Klopp, over drivel. It's worlds away. Now, there's a high pressing element. And obviously, there are some people that just think pressing equals Klopp. There are many different ways to press. And his style of pressing, Jurgen's, is very different to what Arne does. So there isn't a whole lot of crossover. The players being used to pressing will certainly help them. But this is a far more refined version. This is more from probably the Guardiola camp than from it's a lineage from the Bielsa pressing, rather than from Jurgen's, which is the more German style. But there's more control to it with Arne, similar to Pep Guardiola. And there's less of an overcommitment. We used to see players in our team overcommit on presses and leave us susceptible to getting played through, which was fine when we had Fab and Ginny, but became a major issue when we didn't have Fab and Ginny, or we had the ghost of Fab. So Arne's system doesn't leave those gaps, and that's going to be a big change. We should see less teams having transition opportunities against us moving forward than they have in the last couple of years. But yeah, I mean, he wants us to slow the game down in phases, be patient, move the ball side to side, and then when that opponent press comes, that's the trigger for us to start pinging the ball through them and working patterns of play. And this is something that De Zerbi has preached and something that Arne has preached. And it's one of the reasons why Guardiola said that De Zerbi was one of the most influential coaches in world football. And people were like, well, that's weird because, you know, why would he be that? He's won nothing. But that methodology of waiting for a team to press and then using that to find their weaknesses, because like with the amount of work that goes in now to opposition scouting, teams know if this team presses from here, where's the weak point going to be? There's always going to be a weak point in any press, including Guardiola's, including Arne's. Jurgen's had some, Bielsa's has some. There are always a weak point. There is always a weak point in every press. It's either too big a space left somewhere, it's a defender left on an island somewhere, it's a midfielder left with too big a gap to cover. There's always one player that isn't a very good presser. There's always something that you can find to pick on. And that's what this is about. If they press from here, where's the weak point? Let's get the ball to that space. If they press from the left, where is the weak point going to be? It's probably going to be right wing. How do we get the ball there as quickly as possible and get it to Mo in as big a space as possible and get ourselves into position to create something? I think when Arne talks about killing them with passes, it's death by 1,000 passes, which does echo a little bit of the Rodgers era, but this is not the same sort of dull, possession-based drivel that Rodgers played in the first 6 months when he was with us. This is very different. This is more incisive. This is deeper cuts. It's quite exciting. I thought there was some lovely passages of play in the Betis game before all the changes had to be made at half-time in the second half. Obviously, with the one change in the first half, and Treniani came on and simply looked like the best player on the pitch. There is a 5 things we liked about the Liverpool friendly win over Betis. Niani just stood out. And I've said it on Twitter. If you go back to the summer of 2016, we played Roma, Jurgen's first pre-season. We played Roma. I want to say it was in St. Louis in a pre-season game. And this kid called Trent Alexander-Arnold came on at right back for the second half. And you could just tell this is a different type of talent. This kid is head and shoulders above all the other young players. This is a kid that's going to be a starter for us long term. There was one moment where the ball came to him. It wasn't aimed to him, it was aimed to the winger, but came across to Trent. And the winger was pressing him as the ball was in the air. And he has a couple of options here. He can step in and he can head it. He can take a touch, but he's risking then the winger getting close and potentially winning the ball off. And what Trent did was he played this gorgeous little cushioned pass, like a volleyed cushioned pass, perfectly over the winger to a Liverpool player. And you just knew this is different. This is not your run-of-the-mill 16, 17, 18-year-old. And it took him a year, obviously, because 17, 18 was the year Trent broke in. But I'd look at Trey Niani and I would say, I wouldn't expect he'll play much for the senior team this coming season. But 25, 26, I would expect to see at some point in that season, he starts to become a more regular feature. Not as a starter necessarily, because we'll have a lot of quality options in there. But he starts to become a more regular feature of our matchday squads, and then he's coming off the bench a lot, getting the odd start here and there. And we really start to see the momentum build behind him. That's the timeline I'd say on. About 16 to 18 months from this summer, I would say he starts to really clock up minutes. He'll play a little bit, I think, this season. But the following season is when I think Trey will really look to make a jump. And we'll see with this Rio Gamoa. Is that how Gamoa? I think that's how you say it. I think he's a year younger than Trey. So I think next summer on pre-season, we'll probably see him brought along. And I think we'll see him get some opportunities. And if he looks like what people think he's going to look like, I think then it'll be kind of similar timeline for him. What else do we got? Coach highly doubts the team he just fielded will stay at Liverpool this season. So this is the under-21s. We beat Chorley Town 2-0. Orzinski, Miles, Williams and Kometio, well, they're both leaving. Scandal at left back, could see him getting a loan. Corness, Pilling, Ballygizzy, he's definitely going on loan. Hill, Norris and Cannoneer. Lucky, Spearing, Laffey, Kelly, Morrison and Young, all coming off the bench. I'd imagine there's probably two of them that'll leave permanently, Williams and Kometio, and probably another three there that could go on loan this season, which will be good for the development. Liverpool have given contracts to 10 new players. 10 new players. Let's have a look. Okay, have a look at this one. Arne Slot has a new idea for Fabio Carvalho's best position. Okay. So the 10 new players to get contracts. Okay, so Prince Kobe Cisse, his Gibral's son. DJ Bernard and Bailey Hall, they're both goalkeepers. DJ Esdale is a defender. Ryan Cowley, Joe Upton, Tyler Martin, Schofield on many. They are all midfielders. And then Joe Bradshaw and Ollie O'Connor. So those are all scholarships, obviously. Alvin Eamon is the other big-time prospect that we have coming in this summer. And again, he's one that people seem very, very high on. A lot of people are very high on Amara Nallo as well, but centre-backs do tend to be brought along a little bit slower, just given the kind of physical nature of their position. So does appear like we're really, flushing out the academy, boosting the numbers of elite-level prospects, and with a bit of luck, they all start to make some sort of impact. There were 4 notable absentees at Liverpool's open training session on Sunday, 2 of which were unexpected, but not to be majorly concerned over. So Curtis Jones was missing. Obviously, he has an injury. Trey Niani was missing. And my guess is, it's because of his age. They're just trying to be careful with him. So he doesn't play in every session, which makes sense. Ben Doak the same. And with Doak, obviously, he's only just back from the injury. The first time he's had, surgery in his career. So they want to be as careful as possible with him. A lot of talk of him going out on loan. Andy Robertson missed out. And James McConnell missed out. Robertson is remaining with the squad, but he is not close to fit, and McConnell has a minor knock. So there's actually 5 players missing, not 4. What else is there here? Surprise absentee from Liverpool's USA Tour scores and under-21s win. Callum Scanlon. My assumption was it was felt with the fact that we were bringing 3 left-backs, Robertson, Costas, and Luke Chambers, that there was no real point in bringing 4. I think if they'd known Robertson wasn't going to be fit, they probably would have brought Scanlon. But he's getting games, so it's fine. He's getting games, he's working. The other 21's a very good manager, so there's no issue there at all. What have Anfield Watch got for us today? Any new pieces from Maguire, who's been slacking? It should be pointed out, if you want to go on Twitter now and just tell Sam Maguire that he's a slacker and that he needs to get his act together, I think you'd be doing the Liverpool community a great service. Let's see. Fabrizio Romano, Liverpool reject £8.4 million bid for 22-year-olds. So that is a bid from PSV Eindhoven for Sepp Vandenberg. That's an embarrassing bid. Personally, I don't think we should sell him. I think we should keep him. Because I think he can be the backup to Ibu. Like, I know he's not as good on the ball as we would like a centre-back to be. I would wonder how much of that is the fact that he's played for Mainz last season and wasn't being asked to play out from the back. I think from a defensive point of view, he's definitely ahead of Kwanzaa in their development, but that's naturally, he's 2 years older. He's a lot quicker than Kwanzaa, which I think makes him the better Ibu backup than Jarrell is. So I keep him. Ibu's going to miss a bunch of games. I think Sepp could get a bunch of games, enough to keep him happy. And I think we'd be in good shape. Conor Bradley has spoken about the tactical differences between Arne and Jurgen. Lenny Yoro got injured at the weekend in United's game against Arsenal. And it's a funny thing. Like, a lot of people were whinging that we didn't sign him because what if some of our centre-backs get injured and now he's injured? Which, you know, just goes to show there's very little point in crying about stuff like that, because you could sign a new player, they could get hurt. Like, look at Arsenal last year, signed Jury and Timber because they had injury concerns over Tomiyasu and William Saliba, and what if Ben White gets hurt? And then Timber tore his ACL in the first game of the season. You know, there's injuries, there's no pattern to them. There's no way of future-proofing against this type of stuff happening. Now, hopefully the Euro thing is nothing serious, but we'll see. Let's see. Liverpool, one of 7 sides in for Germany star whose buyout clause has just expired. This is Max Bayer of Hoffenheim, versatile forward, 16 goals in all competitions last season. A very talented player. He did have an exit clause of €32.5 million, but it expired at the end of June. Next summer, he's got another buyout clause. He's got 3 years left on his deal, so Hoffenheim have no real urgency to sell him. He is a very good player, and I think he could make sense for us as a squad addition, but I'm not sure we'll add in the attack this summer. Right, nothing else on there. Liverpool.com for the L hopes and dreams. We'll check in with Dave O.C. Coppett as well. Harvey Elliott has opened up on the very hard Arne Slot transition. There's garbage about Anthony Gordon, nonsense about Gleison Bremer. 4 transfer options to replace Endo. Well, they're not replacing Endo. They're needed regardless of whether or not Endo is at the club or gone. Liverpool already signed potential Wataru Endo heir. Right, let's see what nonsense this is. Stefan Bajcetic, of course. Wouldn't expect anything less than people to continue to misprofile him as a defensive midfielder. But he used to be a centre-back. That's not really what makes him a defensive midfielder or not. Declan Rice used to be a centre-back and is not a defensive midfielder. Neither is Stefan Bajcetic. And the notion that either of them are ready to step in and start is just hilarious, to be completely honest. But in a double pivot, you could probably get away with it for at least for 6 months. We'll see. Olympic gold medalist played alongside Liverpool star before making career switch. We'll have a look at that. There's a piece on Federico Chiesa, who we definitely won't be signing. Can't imagine Endo be too keen to go to Marseille. Now, obviously, given they've just signed a bunch of midfielders, now maybe they signed some of them because they couldn't get him. Hard to know. Belgian cyclist Remco Evenepoel won the Olympic time trials in Paris. He played youth football in the Netherlands, though, and lined up alongside a current Red. Cody. Would make sense age-wise, yeah. Evenepoel was a left-back. Fair play. Obviously made the right decision, though, to bin off the football and go and pursue his real dream. And when you've got an Olympic gold medal to your name, when you've just won the young rider classification at the Tour de France, when you've won the general classification at the Vuelta a España, when you've won individual stages at all 3 of the major cycling events, and now you can add a gold medal to that, you're pretty special. You're pretty special, and might not be long before we see this guy started to compete in the Tour de France against the likes of Pogacar and actually, he finished 3rd, so he's already competing. I didn't watch it this year, but Pogacar is a monster. If you're into cycling, do of course make sure you're watching the what's it called? Unchained, is it? The Tour de France documentary on Netflix. Pogacar's just a machine. Vingegaard, he's really good as well. But it looks like this kid he's 24. Looks like he might be the next one. Nothing else on Liverpool.com. On Dave O.C. Cup. What have we got? Piece on Harvey. Piece on Billy Hogan. The Athletic gives 3 reasons why Liverpool rejected a bid for Endo. And look, allegedly this bid came in weeks ago, so I'm not wanting to hear any of the nonsense of, behind the scenes or the inside track or anything from any of these journalists who clearly didn't know this was going on, including Romano, who's a massive spoofer. There's a lot of talk about Galatasaray and Gravenberg. We've been linked with Victor Gyökeres over the weekend. I have a tough time believing that we're going to look for a striker this summer, but he is really, really good. Since early June, Liverpool have been heavily linked with Anthony Gordon. Yeah, entirely by Twitter and one Newcastle journalist over the last month. Although Kevin Palmer, who's gotten one thing right in about 15 years as a journalist, he had some nonsense the other day, didn't he? AnfieldIndex.com. There is a piece about Trent, a piece about Conor Bradley talking about the training sessions, a piece about Billy Hogan, a piece about Harvey, and Robbie Fowler giving his view on the Trent situation. Podcast-wise, there's a new Minefield out, which you should always listen to because the two boys are just brilliant. The David Lynch podcast is out, and Mr. Lynch has appeared again on Media Matters, the Monday Lunchtime pod, talking about the size of the squad, how it is a little bit too big in certain areas, and how there's going to be some ruthless decisions made over the next little while. Do make sure to follow David's Substack, subscribe there when you can. And the good brother, Trev Downey, who you all know and you better love, or I'll come to your houses and beat love into you. This is non-Anfield Index, but I don't care. He has released another episode of The Great Stories. It's The Man of the World by Frank O'Connor. And it is absolutely magnificent. So go and listen to that. Follow Trev across his platforms. Listen to what he does. There's no one better. There's no one better. So whatever he's doing, if he wants to release Trev Downey Reads the Phone Book and charge a tenner for you to listen, pay the tenner and listen to the man read the phone book, because I guarantee you, you'll enjoy it. I'll see you tomorrow. Actually, I may not see you tomorrow. It may be Trev, it may be Dave Davis, it could be Guy. Someone else will be here tomorrow in all likelihood. I have been elected as a family representative to go to a funeral in Donegal because I live the closest, even though it's still hours away from me. So I'm going to that in the morning. It's like a 2.5 hour drive. Go to that, shake some hands, say hello, pass on commiserations, etc., etc., etc. That's about another 2.5 hours, and then drive back. If I'm back by the afternoon, I will do this. If not, someone else will do this. But there will be something tomorrow, and then I'll be back on Wednesday for certain.
We hope you enjoyed listening to this Anfield Index show. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel so future podcasts find their way to your device automatically. There's nothing quite like fan engagement, and we'd love to know what you think of anything discussed on this show. The best way to get in touch is over on our free Discord community, where both podcasters and listeners debate the hottest LFC topics 24/7. Sign up free now at anfieldindex.com/Discord. You won't regret it. You can also follow us on Twitter at Anfield Index and find us on Facebook by searching for Anfield Index. Oh, and before you go, we'd love it if you could leave us a 5-star review on your favourite podcast app. It only takes a couple of seconds, and it means the world to the people who create these free shows.
Sports Social Podcast Network.